Okay, everyone, we are going to now finish up our reading about looters. And as you can see, I have the third of what I'm calling the third of four pages. 4 pages. Remember that I've lettered the paragraphs, and we're going to be picking up with paragraph I. And right now we're going to focus on paragraphs I and J. So let's go ahead and read that, and then of course you'll have some corresponding questions and prompts. This feeling might be especially pronounced. Oh, you might want to review scan the other paragraphs to remind yourself of where we left off last time. So, this feeling might be especially pronounced among people who loot stores that don't tend to serve low-income families. So, low-income minority neighborhoods. That's so weird that I did that. It was like auto text, but it was auto reading. So, then we've got such as Whole Foods. Boyles says looters, Boyles is a sociologist, tend to be poor, and some see it as a chance to balance the scales to get things they normally can't. These communities faced constant deprivation, Boyles told me, and here they find themselves with an opportunity, be it legitimate or illegitimate, to benefit. As one looter, Pamela Speaks, told the Miami Herald during the 1992 Los Angeles riots, "I don't think it's right, but it gets the frustrations out. During the current protest, the opportunist appeal of looting might be exacerbated by the fact that people across the country have been ordered to stay inside for months in an effort to limit the spread of the coronavirus. The protests have seemed to some like a release valve." Okay, so let's go ahead and look at these two paragraphs, I and J. So as you can see, some more words are being used to explain, interpret, make sense of why some people are looting. And so some words that name fundamental and powerful concepts in said interpretation or meaning making include serve, low income, minority neighborhoods, poor, so the concept of poverty, a chance. Some other words or word phrases that name fundamental and powerful concepts include balance the scales. That's an important concept. Constant deprivation. So constant is a concept, deprivation is a concept. Then we have opportunity being used. Do we have? Yeah, so opportunity is a fundamental and powerful concept being used in the quote here from Boyles herself. And of course, she's saying whether it's legitimate or illegitimate. So those name some new words that are pointing to other fundamental and powerful concepts that sociologists and others use to make sense of looting and why people loot. And here it's talking about people who loot stores, like what kind of a neighborhood they might come from, might be their socioeconomic status. I found this sentence really interesting. I don't think it's right, but it gets the frustrations out. So in this last sentence, you see a person who herself is a looter is making a moral claim. So what is the moral claim within quotation marks? So it is what? It's right here. I don't think it's right. So if we were to use uniform language, what would we say? Pamela Speaks doesn't think what is right? Looting. So she's basically saying, I don't think looting is right. If we get rid of all of X's verbiage, Pamela Speaks is saying looting is not right, which would be equivalent to saying looting is wrong. So that's a moral claim. She's making a moral claim about the very action that she is engaged in. She says, nevertheless, that might be true, could be wrong. At the same time, she goes on to explain via a non-moral statement, it gets the frustrations out. So whatever frustrations that maybe people from her background are dealing with. So she can explain why something's going on, but she knows that that doesn't mean that that makes it right. But what's interesting is to think about how one can use ideas expressed in paragraph I to justify the claim that it could be morally permissible to loot stores. So what in here could be used to justify the conclusion that it is sometimes morally permissible to loot? Okay, what one or two reasons or premises could we abstract from this paragraph if we were trying to make an argument on behalf of people who loot for the reasons expressed here? So I'll probably have you do this in the Blackboard Created Review, but we could do something like premise one, right? So we're going to present it as a clarified argument. So we've got what reasons, what factors cause people to loot according to this paragraph? Poverty, maybe, low income that are not served by certain stores. So maybe we could say if you live in a low-income minority neighborhood that is not served by enough stores, comma, it may be morally permissible to loot stores that do not serve you. Then we could add as a missing premise, there are some people who live in low-income minority neighborhoods with stores that do not serve them. That would be premise 2. And then we could do as a conclusion, it is sometimes morally permissible to loot certain stores. Okay, so notice, I'm not saying that I myself think it's ever morally permissible to loot a store. And I'm not saying that you are either. But what I'm trying to teach you how to do is to pull from the environment, to look at a discussion, to look at a debate, to look at a hot topic, and practice intellectual empathy to see the other side. Why might some people say it's morally permissible? Now, you might not agree that premise 1 is actually true or premise 2 is actually true. And even if you think premise 1 and premise 2 are actually true in the argument that I reconstructed verbally, you might say that they don't adequately support the conclusion. In other words, premise 1 and 2 could be true, but that doesn't necessarily guarantee the truth of the conclusion, that it's sometimes morally permissible. Nevertheless, it's an important skill to know what the logic could be on the other side, because once you better understand the logic, of course, the better prepared you are to deal with actual possible ways of thinking and come up with your own arguments against that argument. Or if you happen to agree with the argument in some way, then you are more aware of the why and the how you might support it. All right, so moving on, notice that, well, no, I don't want you to notice anything else. So that's all I've got for that part right there.